Some people run away the moment they smell durian. They say it smells like rotten onions mixed with gasoline. Others swear it's the king of fruits, creamy, sweet, and addictive. Now here's the part almost nobody expects. The country that eats more durian than anyone else on Earth isn't Thailand. It's not Malaysia. It's not Vietnam. It's China. In fact, about 82% of the world's durian ends up in a single market. One country. One set of borders. One buyer powerful enough to decide who wins and who loses. That's when this stops being a food story. Because when one country controls demand like that, durian isn't just a fruit anymore. It becomes leverage. It becomes a supply chain weapon. It becomes a test of food safety, trade rules, and political influence across Southeast Asia. And then suddenly, China did something that shocked everyone. It slammed the door on Thai durian, blocking shipments worth millions of dollars almost overnight. So the real question isn't whether durian is delicious or disgusting. The real question is this: when China suddenly rejected Thai durian, was it really about food safety, or was it about power? To understand why China's decision shook the entire market, we first need to see how powerful Thailand's durian empire really is. Thailand didn't become the king of durian by accident. Geographically, it sits in a perfect sweet spot. High temperatures year-round, heavy rainfall, long hours of sunshine. Think of it like a natural factory designed specifically for tropical fruit, especially durian. Over decades, Thailand didn't just grow durian, it perfected it. The most famous variety is called Golden Pillow. It's known for its thick golden flesh, smooth texture, and balanced sweetness. In the fruit world, it's like a luxury brand, not just something you eat, but something you show off. Durian in Thailand isn't limited to farms and exports. It's deeply cultural. You'll find durian in sticky rice desserts, ice cream, pastries, even festivals. During harvest season, entire provinces turn durian into a tourist attraction, inviting people to pick, taste, and celebrate it. But here's where things scale up dramatically. Thailand is the world's largest durian producer, harvesting more than 1.3 million tons every year. And most of that fruit isn't eaten at home. It goes to one place: China. More than 80% of Thailand's durian exports end up in the Chinese market. Put simply, out of every 10 durians Thailand ships overseas, 8 are sent to China. That kind of success looks like strength, but it also creates a hidden weakness. Because when one buyer takes almost everything you sell, you don't control the game anymore. In January 2025, the durian trade hit a wall. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. More than 100 shipping containers loaded with Thai durian were stopped at Chinese customs. Nearly 150 tons of fruit never made it past the border. Within days, over $13 million in cargo was effectively frozen in place. For exporters, this was a nightmare scenario. Durian isn't like rice or canned food. It's highly perishable. Every extra day sitting in a container means lost quality, lost value, and eventually, total loss. China's official explanation sounded simple and serious. Customs inspectors said they found banned industrial chemicals, including substances classified as carcinogenic, along with shipments missing valid or recognized test reports. From China's perspective, that's an immediate red line. But from Thailand's side, the reaction was disbelief. Exporters insisted they had followed procedures. Laboratories had issued qualified safety reports. The fruit had already passed inspections before leaving Thailand. So why was it suddenly unacceptable? Nothing about the fruit had changed overnight, but the rules, or at least the way they were enforced, clearly had. That's when suspicion began to spread through the industry. Was this really just about unsafe durian? Or had China quietly changed the standard without giving Thailand time to adjust? Because if both sides claimed they were following the rules, then the real mystery becomes unavoidable. So who was lying? And who actually rewrote the rules? To understand why China was able to stop Thai durian so suddenly, You need to understand how China inspects food, and why its system leaves almost no room for error. In Thailand, durian testing usually works like this. From a full shipping container, inspectors randomly select a small number of fruits, sometimes as few as 5 durians per container. If those samples pass, the entire shipment is cleared. China does not work that way. China uses what exporters call a carpet-style inspection. That means everything is checked, not just the fruit, but the cartons, the pallets, the packaging materials, even chemical residue on surfaces that never touch the durian flesh. Imagine airport security, but instead of checking one bag, every single bag is opened. And there are certain substances China treats as absolute red lines. One of them is an industrial dye sometimes referred to as alkaline yellow, a chemical banned from food use because of its toxicity. It's normally used on things like paper or leather, never something people eat. Once that substance appeared in inspection results, the response was automatic. No negotiation, no grace period, no partial approval. But why was China suddenly so strict? The answer lies in scale. In just a few years, China's durian imports exploded. Hundreds of thousands of tons were entering the country annually. To meet demand, some suppliers across Southeast Asia began using ripening agents and cosmetic treatments to speed up harvests and make fruit look more attractive. The problem is that what's allowed in one country isn't always approved in another. For China, even a single contaminated batch doesn't just affect one buyer. It threatens hundreds of millions of consumers. And when the market is that big, tolerance drops to zero. This is the key insight many exporters missed. This wasn't only about durian, it was about China asserting total control over its food supply and making sure everyone else played by its rules. That shift in mindset exposed a deeper problem Thailand could no longer ignore. Once the inspections tightened, cracks inside Thailand's durian system were suddenly impossible to hide. The core problem wasn't that Thai durian was bad, it was that the system had been pushed too hard, too fast. China's demand kept growing, year after year. Prices were good, orders were huge, and exporters were under constant pressure to ship more fruit, faster. In that environment, some orchards and sorting plants began cutting corners, harvesting a little too early, using stronger ripening agents, applying dyes to make shells look fresher and more uniform. Individually, these shortcuts seemed small, but across hundreds of thousands of tons, they added up. Another hidden issue was testing authority. Thai exporters relied on local laboratories to certify safety, but China doesn't recognize every lab equally. In early 2025, Chinese authorities revoked approval for several Thai testing agencies, meaning their reports were suddenly worthless at the border. From Thailand's point of view, this felt unfair. From China's point of view, it was quality control. And this wasn't the first warning. Throughout 2024, Chinese customs repeatedly detected excessive cadmium levels in Thai durian shipments. Warning letters were issued. Orchards were blacklisted. Packaging plants were flagged. The reputation damage quietly stacked up. Thailand's response was defensive. Officials argued that some contaminated durians weren't Thai at all, claiming merchants had relabeled Vietnamese durian as Thai to get higher prices. With thousands of small producers and exporters involved, enforcement was fragmented and inconsistent. That's what made this crisis different. It wasn't about one bad shipment or one dishonest exporter. It was a system under stress, where speed and volume had begun to outrun safety and control. And while Thailand struggled to fix that system, another country was already positioning itself to take advantage. While Thailand was busy dealing with inspections, suspensions, and damage control, Vietnam was quietly doing something smarter. It wasn't waiting for Thailand to fail. Instead, it was preparing for the moment Thailand slipped. Vietnam officially gained access to China's fresh durian market in 2022. At first, exports were small, but once the door opened, growth was explosive. By 2023 and 2024, Vietnamese durian exports to China had jumped several times over. This wasn't luck, it was planning. Vietnam's biggest advantage is geography. Unlike Thailand, which relies heavily on sea transport, Vietnam can move durian by land straight into southern China. That single difference changed everything. Transport costs dropped by around 60%. Delivery times became faster. Fruit arrived fresher. For Chinese consumers, that translated into prices that were about 30% cheaper on average. Vietnam also made a strategic technical move. Instead of focusing only on whole fresh fruit, it invested in processed durian pulp. Fresh durian is shelled, then rapidly frozen using liquid nitrogen at -18 degrees Celsius. This extends shelf life dramatically and makes it easier to ship durian deep into inland Chinese cities, far from the border. Thailand mostly sold premium fresh fruit. Vietnam sold flexibility, lower cost, more stable supply, easier logistics. That's why China didn't just tolerate Vietnamese durian, it welcomed it. And this leads to a critical realization. Vietnam didn't wait for Thailand to collapse. It built an alternative supply chain while Thailand was distracted by crisis. But Vietnam isn't the only country watching this shift. And China isn't done reshaping the market yet. Once cracks appeared in Thailand's supply, the entire region started paying attention. Durian is not easy to grow. It needs very specific heat, rainfall, and time. That means only a handful of countries can realistically compete at scale. In Southeast Asia, Malaysia and the Philippines immediately saw an opening. They didn't just see a fruit shortage. They saw a market worth billions of dollars, controlled almost entirely by one buyer. At this point, durian stopped being an agricultural product and started looking like a strategic commodity. China holds the strongest position in this game because it doesn't need to negotiate loudly. It sets standards. One food safety rule in Beijing forces orchards, labs, and exporters across Southeast Asia to adjust their entire systems. Miss that standard, and you don't just lose one shipment. You lose access to the world's largest durian market. Food safety in this context becomes a trade filter. Meet the standard, and you're rewarded with access, volume, and profits. Fail it, and your fruit never crosses the border. This is why countries started racing to align with China's inspection rules, testing methods, and certification systems. It's not about pleasing China politically. It's about survival in the supply chain. The power dynamic is simple. China chooses who supplies. Southeast Asia competes to qualify. And while Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and others fight for a bigger slice of China's demand, China has been quietly preparing a move that could change the entire game. Here's the twist almost no one expected. While Southeast Asian countries were competing to sell durian to China, China started asking a different question. Why not grow it ourselves? As early as 2020, China began experimenting with durian cultivation in Hainan province, the only region in the country with a climate close to Southeast Asia's tropics. At first, most people laughed it off. Durian trees are delicate. They take years to mature. Many believed China couldn't replicate Southeast Asia's conditions. But China didn't rush. It engineered the process. Research teams focused on soil control, temperature management, and pest prevention, not with heavy chemicals, but with natural herbal methods. The result was lower contamination risk and better alignment with China's own food safety rules. By the mid-2020s, thousands of acres of durian trees in Hainan began producing fruit. The volumes were still small compared to imports, but the signal was huge. Domestically grown durian was already 15 to 20% cheaper than imported fruit. No shipping delays, no foreign inspections, no dependency on overseas suppliers. Now project this forward. As domestic production expands, China doesn't need to replace all imports. It only needs to reduce dependence. Once that happens, bargaining power shifts even further. Southeast Asian exporters won't just compete with each other. They'll compete with China's own farms for premium buyers. That's why this story isn't really about durian. It's about who adapts to China's standards, who upgrades fast enough, and who gets locked out of the most powerful food market in Asia. Durian is just the test case. So here's the real question to leave you with. Do you think Vietnam will replace Thailand as China's top supplier? Or will China eventually replace them all? If this changed how you see food, trade, and power, let me know in the comments.